The Pesky Report is sponsored by High and Happy Catering out of Springfield, Massachusetts. Their chef, Michael Best, can cook anything you want with or without being infused with cannabis. Check out some of what they make on their Instagram at High and Happy Catering or call them at 413-785-8999. You'll be happy you did.
Welcome to the Pesky Report, a podcast for Red Sox fans.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 158 of the Pesky Report presented by Belly Up Sports Media. My name is Brandon Brewer. Joining me is Ed Hand and the Enigma Hogdale. And gentlemen, we are roughly 46 days away from the kickoff of the NFL season. Let's go.
Yeah. Gearing up.
Oh,
Matthew,
is that some baseball, new baseball league?
Oh no, we're moving on from baseball now because apparently so have the Red Sox.
They checked out. They've had enough.
Wow. This weekend, obviously, for those that are listening that do still keep up with the Red Sox, thank all 6 of you. The Red Sox had a terrible weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays. It was not very fun to watch. A lot of games that were easy to just turn it off. They did try to make it close, sort of, in some of the games, but that Friday game just kind of, I don't know, man. Where do you guys want to start?
Well, first off, we got to start with, Chaim Bloom just isn't getting enough hate for taking a golf club and beating up his players and making them injured and doing that on purpose. And I just really think that he hasn't gotten enough shit for that. I think it's pretty fucked up.
The craziest part of that is how he learned how to throw a major league fastball to take out Trevor Story and then hit that line drive off of Chris Sale's pinky. I mean, he's clearly a two-way player. So what's he doing as a GM when he could be playing for the team after learning those abilities?
He did that, and then he fucking beat the shit out of Raffy with a golf club behind closed doors. Like, yeah, he's a menace and needs to be stopped. Like, it hasn't been brought up enough.
I think that John Henry's afraid of him. I think that's what the issue is. I think Bloom has really just shown his dominance over everyone in the system, and now he's just seeing, the more games that they lose, the richer and more powerful Bloom becomes. So someone needs to stop him. You're right. He's a menace to society.
It has gotten completely out of hand. But joking aside, you guys do bring up a good point with the injuries that are plaguing the Red Sox right now. It's not just like the Red Sox are losing these games. The players are dropping like flies. Rafi played in the All-Star game. He went out to Los Angeles, came back. All of a sudden, he's all banged up, can't play. Sucks.
JD Martinez as well at the All-Star game. Now he's having back. What is it? Back spasms with him? The season. These guys, you get beaten down over the course of the baseball season. It's not like it's a marathon, So injuries come to every team, but this has just been. I don't remember the last time this many injuries happened at once, and it wasn't like COVID related.
Yeah, I mean, it really could be seen as a regression to the mean of sorts because the Red Sox were one of the healthiest teams in baseball all of last year, at least for their hitting core. All the core guys pretty much played almost all the games. I think Xander might have missed a little stint, but it wasn't an extended absence. And this year, all the main guys have missed at least a little bit of time. And Xander, people speculated that he's hurt and he's just been playing through it. And that's why his power has just been non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, he's hit the ball hard, but you're absolutely right that the power has just been sapped from what we're used to. And, yeah, I mean, look at the starting lineup. You've got Jeter Downs on a regular basis, Yolmer Sanchez. These are like the depth for the depth guys that are out because Arroyo hasn't been able to stay healthy. Kike Hernandez went down early. A lot of these depth guys that play a lot of positions, they haven't really been able to use. So you're ending up with a lot of very raw players who, the talent's there, and it's great that they're getting the experience and the exposure. But for a team that's trying to compete for a playoff spot, it's the opposite of what you want.
Let's put a pin in that right there. Playoff spot. Are the Red Sox actually competing for a playoff spot this year? Yes or no?
Like right now at this exact moment?
Like, do you think they will be competing for a playoff spot?
I think, I'm going to let Hogdale go first because I think I know what he's going to say, and then I'm going to have mine. But
like in reality, or like on technicality, I'm sure if I looked at the wild card standings right now, they wouldn't be too far behind. I mean, the Mariners have been on one hell of a heater of late, so maybe I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they should still be within 4 or 5 games of the last wild card spot, right? So on technicality, yes, but especially like based on performance right now and injury outlook, I really don't like the chances. And even with that, okay, what, you squeak in as the last wild card and then you get fucking demolished in the first round?
Yeah, you get crushed by the Yankees or the Astros in the first round. You're
not lucking into a 1-game wild card fluke. It's 3 now. It's a set of 3. So, I mean, I just don't like it. I mean, based on inclination, like, I don't think they're true contenders this year. I think they should probably sell.
So as of right now, the Red Sox are 3 games out of that 3rd wild card spot. The teams that have it, that are in, like if the season ended right now, it would be Toronto, Tampa Bay, and then Seattle, and then Cleveland's 2 games out.
So here is why I don't want to commit to one thing or the other. And it's simply how the team has played, not just this year, but in 2021 also. And it's just been a roller coaster. It's been so streaky where you will see them play out of their minds, one of the best months in team history, even this year in June. And then you have a stinker like July or May. And then in 2021, it was kind of more of the same thing where they'd go on these really ridiculous tears. And then, you watch them play and it's like, man, I think the Double-A team might be able to beat them right now. And when you have that kind of volatility, I guess, it's hard for me to say straight up like, oh yeah, no, they're dead. They're dead. Because again, they were 9 games below 500. They were 10 games above 500. Now they're back at 500. Does it look good? I'm not going to pretend it does. I'm not going to pretend that they have even most of their team right now. But, they've played so bad against their own division. What is it, like 0-11-1 against their division? That just sheer probability and luck says that they're going to take at least a couple of those series. Has that ever happened, that a team has lost every single series against their division in a full season? I feel like even that happening in one half is so unlikely that they've got to just accidentally walk into a few wins there. And if that happens, a team like Seattle's not going to stay on a 12-game win streak for the rest of the year. Other teams are going to slump. The Red Sox aren't going to be losing. What was it, the series that we said 40-10 every single series? They're professionals. Are they playing like shit like right now? Yeah, absolutely. But with the 3rd wild card spot and just with what we've seen with this team, I could see them going on and having another winning streak in them. Do I think it's likely? Probably not. But I'm not gonna say they're dead yet.
I think we are inching closer to that time when we have to admit and accept that they are dead. With this most recent series, you alluded to it, they lost 40-10 to the Toronto Blue Jays. That put them in negative run differential for the first time since April, which
oh god,
not good. Whenever you look at the standings and you see that the Yankees have a run differential of plus 200. And now the Red Sox have a run differential negative 12. So not so good. You're not going to win a lot of games or series if you're scoring less runs than the opponent.
But losing by more than 3 touchdowns will do that to you. We'll,
and I'm glad you said that because that Friday night game, I keep going back to it, but I kept getting text messages. I kept getting blown up on Facebook and on Twitter. All of my friends were checking in on me to make sure that I was okay. And I told them, I was like, look, I watched Tom Brady come back from 28-3 in the Super Bowl. We had him right where we wanted him. We just ran out of time in that game. All we needed was three touchdowns and a field goal, and we were back in that thing. So,
no, it's not. It's worse when you're losing. Actually, that's a question that I have for you guys. Would you rather something like this where you're just getting blown out of the water, or would you rather the team keep on blowing saves like we were getting in April and May? Like, what would you? Because right now, honestly, I think the bullpen is as strong as it's been this entire season. It's just that there's been no opportunity to use it.
It's because the starting pitching has started to fall apart.
Right.
which is exactly what we all predicted would happen. Is once they finally righted the ship that was the bullpen, everything else would fall apart. And now we have no starting pitching, we have no hitting because everyone is on the IL, and the relievers are like, hey, at least we're throwing strong.
But what's your answer to that, though? Would you rather just a full-on blowout, or would you rather get your heart ripped out in the bottom of the ninth inning?
I think what's worse is the blowing so many saves. I mean, you can take being blown out one game and it's like, whatever. It is what it is. But night in and night out, biting your fingernails off whenever a closer comes in or a late innings reliever comes in because you know the game is on the line, even with a 3-run cushion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I prefer I don't mind as much like blowing a save because at least that like on paper, like especially with the trade deadline coming up, in my head that would be a fixable problem. Like that's something we can remedy, and at least they're battling and keeping it close in all these games. When you're getting blown out consistently, it's like, man, these guys are no good, and I have no faith in them to do anything in the playoffs.
Well, now, if you're getting blown out consistently, that's a different thing. Losing one game 28-5 or whatever is an outlier. That, to my knowledge, the Red Sox haven't been blown out that bad in many years.
No,
so, but they have blown 20 saves this season. So
Something like that.
even if you were to go out at the trade deadline and try to bring in somebody, that's not going to get like that one guy might be a solid piece, but it's not going to guarantee that all of the other guys that have blown saves throughout the season aren't going to continue screwing it up for them.
True, but it does tell you that your lineup is consistently keeping you within games, like even when the bullpen is spotty.
When healthy.
Yeah, when healthy. I mean, even when healthy, like this team has a bit of a problem in that like at least 2 of the lineup spots are black holes in terms of production at the plate. So that's a bit not great. And then when there are injuries, there's like 3 or 4 black holes of production at the plate.
I'm going to say it's 1.5 because Fenway Jackie made his return today, this weekend.
Man, the Jackie stuff is so frustrating to me because I feel like a lot of people, it's like reflecting on like the Hunter Renfroe trade. It keeps getting worse and worse. It's getting really bad now. And a lot of people will say like, oh, well, Jackie's defensive production evens it out. No, it doesn't. At least not this year. And past years of Jackie, yes, it would. But if you look at the advanced numbers and like wins above replacement, Jackie's a negative half a win player this year. At least before, he was still giving you 2 or 3 wins a year as a player, even when he had, he's never been a good hitter. So even like his defense is still really good, but it's not that transcendent level. And Hunter Renfroe was pretty much repeating what he did last year, which is like a really good number 6 hitter. Which, I mean, especially with the injuries right now, you're telling me this team couldn't use another bat?
Well, it's interesting with Renfroe because he has spent some time on the IL this year also. But I mean, hindsight is 2020, obviously, and I think that trade and just the offseason moves that were made probably should have been a good tip off that this wasn't a go for it year. Because you don't trade Renfroe for 2 prospects and Jackie Bradley Jr.'s contract. You don't do that if you're going for it. You would find somebody else to fill in that hole there. That should have been a tip off. And for some people, I'm sure it was, and for other people, it wasn't. I still don't hate it because I don't think that as useful as he would be for this year, I think that Renfroe is a replaceable player, but would I have liked them to have gotten somebody to fill in for that bat that wasn't Jackie? Yeah. Yeah, I think if they're competing this year, that would be good. I don't think signing Tommy Pham would have been that hard to do.
Yeah. Because, I just don't think in 2022, like, JBJ should not be an everyday outfielder. I mean, I said this from the beginning. Like, he should be your sixth outfielder. Or, sorry, your fourth or fifth outfielder. And, like, Renfroe, like, the whole premise of the trade is like, okay, we're buying a prospect, and we're going to bet that Renfroe isn't going to repeat what he's doing this year. Like, that's our bet. Well, the bet has failed. he's repeating what he's done this year. He's actually has a better OPS plus. He's got 2 wins above replacement. It's a bit rough. I don't want to say it's hindsight, because at least, like, for me, I saw the trepidations at the beginning. I'm like, it's a bet. And especially since, like, it was seen as like you're buying a prospect, but did you really need to buy a prospect by getting rid of Hunter Renfroe, who was never a bad player? I mean, I know he
was a bad player in Tampa.
I mean, in this last year at least.
Right. In the last year, yeah.
Like, because he's not a negative.
I think maybe the playoff run last year is what soured a lot of people on Hunter Renfroe's performance, because he wasn't really
he was terrible
there.
in the playoffs.
Yeah, he wasn't there. But the regular season Renfroe was very good for the Boston Red Sox. And in fact, the Red Sox might not have made that push to the playoffs had it not been for Renfroe. But speaking of that, it's kind of hard going into an offseason when you're just a few games away from making the World Series and being like, yeah, we're not going to push it in this year. It's kind of a bad look on the organization. So we've got a trade deadline that is coming up. We know the Red Sox will be doing something at the trade deadline, whether it's selling off assets to bring in more prospects for the future, or maybe they do decide to make that push, because as the Atlanta Braves showed us last year, just make it to the playoffs and anything can happen. So maybe they want to make that push. Maybe they want to try to make something happen, but who knows? What do you guys think coming up for this trade deadline, and how do you think the Twitterverse is going to completely react or overreact when it comes time?
It's going to be an overreaction no matter what.
Do we really expect anything else from Red Sox Twitter? Like, truthfully, do we?
Oh, I have a feeling that this year's trade deadline might get nuclear.
Oh yeah, they're going to be really upset when they sell. And it doesn't need to be like a complete fire sale. It can be if you want to. You don't need to tear this thing down to the floorboards though at all. It's just because the Red Sox, obviously, they're a team in the upper echelon of baseball who can throw their weight financially around. So they should be able to patch any holes going into next year within the offseason if they really want to. But, sure. If most guys that aren't Rafael Devers should be up for fucking trade, like right now, like anyone with like an expiring contract, JD, Christian Vasquez has had a great bounce back year. You could probably get something good for him from a contender. If Xander can move his no trade and you're not going to pay him, definitely. But again, he'd have to say yes to that, and there's no guarantee that he would.
How much hatred do you think the front offices would get if they did move on somebody like Xander Bogaerts, especially with guys like David Ortiz coming out saying we have to sign Xander and Rafi? Is that setting the entire front office up for failure when guys like that speak out?
Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be nuclear. Heim's going to have a lot of heat on him. Like, he's already the guy. He's already has the perception of the guy that traded Mookie Betts. So I can't say the fan reaction is going to be great if they end up trading Xander. But also, one good thing is that ownership and the front office has consistently shown they don't really give a shit what the fans have to say. And then sometimes that can be a good thing if you have a grander vision and you have an idea of what you want to do, which I know the Red Sox do. Like Ed said, the wider signs of this last offseason showed they didn't see this year as a go for it year. So this is just a filler year until they can really build up their arms.
That being said, trade deadline moves are always, a talking point and a conversation piece. Ed, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to offer my own opinion on that with Hogdale. I actually think that if they don't do anything, that would be worse than the trade than if they do trade Bogarts as far as the fan reaction goes.
Oh, if they just did nothing, like at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Because I think that standing pat, you're going to just have, if you make a move, you're going to have one side of it be like, good, they're going into the complete rebuild. That's what they should be doing. And if you have the other side there, then they're going to be like, we love Bogarts and we're we're glad that they didn't move him. But if you just kind of stay on pat, it's gonna be worse of a look. And I think if it's me, I trade everybody that is not on contract for next year. So that's let me think for a second. That's I actually would trade Xander, but I'd move JD Martinez, I'd move Nathan Eovaldi, Christian Vasquez, Matt Straub in the bullpen. And I guess my reasoning on that is that I think that you have to try and bring back Xander. I really think you have to at least make that effort. And trading him is going to make it that much harder. And I also think that you run the risk that he vetoes the trade, and then you have all that bad blood for trying to deal him. So I don't think that really helps your cause there.
No, I agree. And I'm saying, only try to move Xander if you are 100% sure that we are not going to pay him. I think you should pay him.
Yeah.
Not a super long-term deal, but like at least a 5-year. At least 5 year with a good AAV.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think that you can do some building for next year without having to sell everybody. I think that there might be some give and take where they deal some prospects for somebody that's under control for next year that they think might be good. But then they also sell someone like Eovaldi. It's really hard to say. This regime since Bloom took over has been they keep everything so close to the vest that I don't even really listen to rumors involving the Red Sox at this point. It's going to be really interesting what we're talking about a week from now.
Oh yeah,
it really will be. I want you guys to take a journey with me, if you will. Ed, you came up with a brilliant tweet this past week that kind of sparked some creative ideas in my head, and I want you guys to picture the years 2004. The Red Sox just came off of a Game 7 in the ALCS where they got beat by the New York Yankees. They were in extras, just mere outs away from going to the World Series. And we all thought that 2003 was a team that could go. Then 2004 happens. Here comes the trade deadline. And Nomar Garciaparra gets shipped out of town. This would have been one of those moments in Red Sox Twitter history that would have completely melted down. We're talking everything would have been completely burned to the ground. The front office would have been ran through the mud. Everybody would be fighting that, you don't know what you're talking about. No, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, lo and behold, a few months later, the Red Sox won the World Series that same year. That being said, with things like Xander Bogaerts potentially being talked about on the trade block, he's the next big shortstop that we've had since that time. So that's why a lot of people are really up in their feels about this. But let's talk about some of the other notable trade deadline moves that have happened and kind of navigate the waters and see what ended up happening that season as well.
All right. That seems like a good idea. I can tell you, though, I think I might have gotten arrested if the Nomar trade had happened while I was I was mad. I had an Angel Fire site at the time. I wrote this really angry thing that I think I titled it "Fuck Theo Epstein," and I said that he ruined my life. I was a freshman in high school. He didn't actually ruin my life, as it turns out. Pretty good GM. I still don't think I'd make that trade were it me as the GM, but hey, that's why he's probably going to get in the Hall of Fame, and I'm on this podcast. But
he was just too much of a visionary at the time. We couldn't see the forest for the trees. He could.
Can you imagine that though? If they traded Xander for like a defense first baseman and like that isn't going to start, and like a shortstop that's very unobjective, that's very objectively a downgrade over Bogarts. Like it would be like if we did like if Mitch Moreland was still playing and we traded Xander Bogarts for like Mitch Moreland and I don't know who's like a second tier shorts, not even a second. I think Cabrera was more like a third tier shortstop with good.
It'd be like trading for like a 2014 Steven Drew.
Yeah, or like Brandon Crawford before he started hitting well again, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, like it's just like, yeah, no, people would have blown up on that trade. It would have been horrible. I'm curious though about the Eric Gagne trade in 2007, where I had that up. They dealt Kaysen Gabbard, David Murphy, and Angel Beltre for Eric Gagne. Now that was the 2007 team that went on to win the World Series, but Gagne was bad. Was very bad.
I imagine he was pretty old at the time.
Yeah, he was, but they still dealt. Gabbard was a reasonable prospect. Murphy was a reasonable prospect. I don't really remember Beltre super well, but I'm sure he was a prospect as well. Murphy went on to have a pretty good career, so But how do you think Twitter would have responded to that one?
Probably been a lot of people hyping up like Eric Gagne, like, oh my fucking god, dude, we got the legit guy. And they look at like his past highlights and shit, and fucking be like, this guy's a stud. But then like the analytics side would be like, this is a fucking dog shit trade. Why are you giving up a decent prospect for this old man who's over the hill?
Yeah, I tried like earlier in Gagne's career, like he was a save machine. Like he was one of those guys that you would. I know Ed, you guys just had a Red Sox reliever on.
Brendan Salucci,
yeah, and he was talking about the closer by committee versus the lockdown guy, and Gagne for a stretch of 3 or 4 years was a lockdown guy back in 2002 through about 2005 or so, if memory serves.
Oh, and yeah, he won Cy Young, didn't he, as a reliever?
I believe so. Yeah, he did in 2003. He was the Cy Young, so he was nasty.
Back when voters were obsessed with giving relievers Cy Youngs for some reason.
Were they? Did any other Cy? Who else won this? What other reliever won the Cy Young back then?
I believe. Obviously earlier than that, but Dennis Eckersley won a Cy Young and an MVP.
Yeah, wasn't he a starter though for that? Or
I think he was a starter that year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Gagne was great, but then I think the injury bug caught up to him, and he just wasn't the same after that. So whenever he finally did come to Boston, he was a shell of his former self, and maybe they thought like, oh, he'll be able to get back to it, but he never did.
They didn't realize that he had stopped taking the roids because they were testing harder for them.
Yeah, probably.
That too. No, the HGH was a thing with Gagne, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
I mean, sorry. No, go ahead.
I think you're absolutely right, though. I think at the time Twitter would have been hyping it up because he was a big name. He was still a household name at the time. It's just like when Trevor Story this past offseason got signed to the Red Sox. It was hyped up as a big thing because he's a known name. He's a major league all-star. And same with Gagne at that time. He was a well-known name. He was well-respected and well feared among hitters. So Red Sox Twitter would have absolutely loved that move.
I think that's accurate. Who do you think, Hogdale? What's because I know you did our homework assignment as well. So
yeah, I was looking back, especially since obviously I think they have a good chance of selling. So I wanted to look back at some trades when the Red Sox actually sold and got a good return. And I went back to 1997, July 31st.
I know where you're going.
Seattle Mariners. They gave up. The Red Sox gave them Heathcliff Slocum in return. One of the greatest heists of all time. They got Derek Lowe and Jason Varitek.
Hell of a trade. Hell of a trade on that one.
Two massive pieces to two championship teams, at least Varitek. Was Lowe still around for that 07?
No, but he was on the 04. He was on the 04 team.
I know he was on the 04 one.
Yeah. No, I think he went to the Dodgers.
He's got that sound bite forever from the 04 team. But yeah, that is a heist of the century. You got the captain out of that deal, and that's one at the time that I bet Red Sox Twitter might not have really thought too fondly of, because relatively unknown players at that time.
Yeah, and I think Farrakhan was 24 at the time. He didn't really make it to the main. Wasn't really a rookie, I think, until he was 26.
So what was the Heathcliff? Was the Heathcliff Slocum fan base in a stir at the time? Like, I don't know. Was he actually any good?
He wasn't bad. I mean, as somebody who also just likes people with funny names, he was up there for that.
Well, on that season alone,
he was 3.46 ERA, so he was a decent reliever.
Okay, so I've got a question for you then, because I've got another heist
5 on the win-loss, though.
I've got another heist for you guys that actually predates it, and it's the other way around. So, the Red Sox, I believe it was 1990, maybe 1992. I forget the exact year, but they were in a pennant race, and they needed a reliever. So they dealt a prospect in their system who did, he was like a doubles hitting first baseman. He was a local boy, so people like that about him. But that guy ended up being Jeff Bagwell that they traded.
No. That's rough.
And I think the lesson that I'm really getting out of this is do not ever trade prospects for relief pitchers.
Holy fuck.
That is wild. That is one that, that's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of Red Sox fans that were diehards back in the early 90s.
But I mean, another seller one that I saw is when the Sox dumped off Manny Ramirez and 2 nobodies for Jason Bay, who had at least one really good season with the Sox.
I don't think that was that a seller year? Wasn't that 2008?
Was 2008.
Yeah, so that was more of I feel like that was more of just trying to get Manny had just beaten up the secretary, like the traveling secretary with the team. So I think they were just trying to get him out of there.
I forgot that he did that. He did a lot of shit.
Yeah, Manny Manny being Manny wasn't as fun as we remember it being, I think. And I love Manny Ramirez, but it really there were some not so good things there.
Imagine if his career would have played out with Twitter.
Oh my God,
and
it would be so funny.
all of his extracurriculars were that well known.
Where do you think that would have rated? And I feel like I'm going to articulate this very badly, but post Me Too, how does beating up a 60-something-year-old man, does he get kicked out of baseball? Does he get suspended? Where does that fall? Because there wasn't a suspension or anything for him there. What happens in that scenario now?
I think he definitely minimum gets a suspension. Surely.
I think he definitely gets suspensions, especially if you put that happening in today's world where,
everyone will know. We probably see the video.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara got in a fight with a guy out in Vegas, and he's going to end up getting suspended for it.
Yeah.
We see players that get in fights with, people out at a bar, and they end up in trouble for it. So beating up a 60-plus-year-old person, I have people
also. That is somebody that works for you. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Yeah. Very bad. Credit the Red Sox, they handled it in house or whatever, but not a good look, especially if the videos are circulating and it's what's his name, the equipment manager shared a video on his Twitter of Manny Ramirez beating the crap out of Grandpa. Not a good look.
Yeah. And finally, the deadline that probably most accurately could reflect what could happen at this one, 2014, where the Red Sox, by their standards, they did do a fire sale. Only one of these trades, I would say, was pretty bad in the long run, and that'd be the first one where they gave up John Lester and cash considerations along with Johnny Gomez for Yoenis Cespedes, who I believe he was a Red Sox for such a short period of time. Wasn't he only here for a year and a half?
Yeah, they traded him for Rick Porcello.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was half a
So at least
season.
you got
They got
that.
him for Porcello, yeah. That's an interesting trade to look back at because I remember at the time the general belief was they were going to re-sign Lester after, so it almost felt like they were swindling Oakland by getting Cespedes and then just re-signing Lester the next year. Then obviously that didn't happen.
Then they just lowballed him. Which is
But
great.
I do remember when what happened, and then there was other trade. It was John Lackey and AJ Pierzynski for Joe Kelly and what was Alan Craig, something like that.
Yep, you got it. That's the next one I was going to bring up. And the Red Sox got multiple contributors to the 2018 World Series team during this deadline. Like obviously this one they get Joe Kelly. Also, they traded Andrew Miller for Erod.
I forgot about that one. That was a good move.
Yep, and like that was a key piece to that 2018 rotation. And then they got a bullpen arm in Heath Hembry for Jake Peavy and some cash.
I feel like
Heath Hembry later turned into Nick Pivetta. So,
and he turned into Nick Pivetta. What a
I don't remember the order with this, but that was Cherington who did those trades, right? So they basically they exploited Cherington's ability to judge minor league talent and then replaced him with Dombrowski.
Also, funny thing, this player ended up being a nobody, but I think this was like the first recorded time the Red Sox and Yankees had traded in like 50 years, is when they traded Steven. They gave Steven Drew to the Yankees for Kelly Johnson.
Oh, I remember Kelly Johnson. He had a couple. He was good with Atlanta. I think he had like 26 home runs for them, but that was well before that.
And I remember everyone was just like, "That's weird." The Red Sox the Yankees,
and then we got the Ottavino trade.
Yeah, and that's also weird because it's just like that. Just no, this is dirty, and I don't like it, even if it's nothing.
I don't know. Bloom's kind of obsessed with swindling Yankee pitching prospects, so I'm kind of okay with the Ottavino trade, but you're right. It's always weird with even like any interdivision. Even like thinking about that trade with the Orioles feels a little weird. Andrew Miller for Erod.
It's weird thinking about a time when like the Orioles were like buying at the deadline.
Yeah. Oh, that's another deal, by the way. Don't trade prospects for relievers because Miller didn't stay with the Orioles after that year, and Erod was a solid starter for the Red Sox for like 6 years. So.
Also, that John Lester trade was probably the first time in recorded history that the Athletics bought at the deadline.
Yeah, it seemed like that one. You talked about how the general consensus at the time was like, oh, he's just going to be a rental for the Oakland A's, and then he'll come back to Boston at the end of the season. Kind of like how Aroldis Chapman went to the Reds and then went back to the Yankees.
Yeah,
even to the Cubs.
Cubs, but yeah.
Or to the Cubs, yeah. Why did I say?
You owe me a soda, Hogdale.
Yeah, sorry, Jeffrey, of course. I'll fucking UPS it to you, brother.
Yeah. Amazon it to me with like one of those Amazon drones. Is that how those work? I don't know how those work.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't the Reds when I said it because I was thinking in my head and got a World Series ring, but the Reds haven't won a World Series in forever. So
Yankees fans always clown the Cubs because like you gave us Glaber. Like, dude, they won a World Series, which you haven't done since 2009, and they don't win that World Series without Aroldis Chapman. He was the piece of the bullpen for like their entire playoff run. Yeah,
they abused him that postseason too.
I could tell you something else that Aroldis abused, but
oh man, this has been our darkest episode. This has been by far our darkest episode.
Whenever you suffer through a 28-5 loss, it kind of puts you in that headspace where you're not really that positive about a lot of things.
You know which trade I really liked? You know which trade though? Like this, thinking about something happy, and this goes all the way back, 2002. Dan Duquette, and that trade is Sonny Kim and Song Sun Jun for Cliff Floyd because even before he was with the Red Sox. My dad's an Expos fan, or when they were thick, and he was with the Expos, so we, see the Expos and stuff like that sometimes. Love Cliff Floyd. Brought a lot of energy to the Red Sox. Fun player. Love that trade at the time. I don't think they made the playoffs, but it was pretty exciting. And I know that got talked about a bit in the book Moneyball because originally there was some kind of a plan that the A's had to get Kevin Youkilis by getting Cliff Floyd and then dealing him, and they described Youkilis as like a fat third baseman, and they were like, yeah, we like that he walks, but they're not gonna not get Cliff Floyd in the Boston market just because of some fat third baseman. So we'll be able to pull that trade off, and then then the Expos were wondering why the A's wanted Euclid so bad, and it kind of ended up messing up the that whole three-way trade potential. But yeah, I love Cliff Lloyd. I think that's actually might be my favorite deadline trade of all time for the Red Sox.
One of my favorites is one that I remembered after looking this up. Is in 2009, the Red Sox getting Victor Martinez from the then Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians, for Justin Masterson, Brian Price, and Nick Hagedorn. A bunch of mid and nothing for an all-star catcher.
Masterson had a couple of good years as a starter. He ended up
I was pretty high on him.
Quick, but I like Masterson. He looked like Mr. Clean, and he had like that weird wind up. He had a couple of good years for Cleveland, like right after that. But Martinez was such a good hitter.
I wish they would have resigned him. It's him and Adrian Beltre are like both guys. I'm like, man, I wish we could have kept these guys long term. Because they had such short stints with the team. Both were really good. And Victor Martinez was a key contributor to those Tigers teams that were so absurdly good and somehow didn't win.
Yeah. And Beltre obviously is I don't think he was on the rebound. And that was really his rebirth after that disaster contract he had with Seattle really started with the Red Sox. And honestly, I think about this is one of those ones that I think about a lot. Okay, how would things be different if they had re-signed Adrian Beltre? And the answer is Euclid probably ends up playing longer because he doesn't tear his body up playing third base. They don't make the trade for Adrian Gonzalez because they have Euclid at first base. Everything's different.
It is. It's like, the butterfly effect thing. And like, it's such a bummer too, because like, obviously Beltre went to Texas and had a Hall of Fame career afterwards.
Yeah.
And to me, Adrian Beltre is consistently one of the most underrated players in modern baseball. Like, dude, he was so good.
You can make a case that he's an all-time top 10 third baseman.
100%. And people just don't, usually see that. Like, you hear the name Adrian Beltre, and you're like, oh, he was really good. Like, I didn't think you wouldn't think top 10 all-time third baseman, but you really should. Like, the dude was such a great talent. And again, man, those Rangers teams that made back-to-back World Series and didn't win either of them. Fucking rough. That's rough, buddy.
Those two guys, Beltre and Gonzalez, remind me of another guy that was acquired at the trade deadline that was not retained long term, and that's Kyle Schwarber. That's another trade deadline acquisition that made a huge impact on a potential World Series run, and then was not able to be re-signed, and now is crushing the ball for Philadelphia.
He's already hit 30 home runs.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting with Schwarber because you can say, looking back at that was a terrible move not to re-sign him. I do get the logic with it, and as far as roster construction goes, one of the big issues with this team is how streaky a lot of the hitters are, like Trevor Story, Bobby Dahlbeck, all these guys are like Kike Hernandez, very streaky hitters. Schwarber's like that too. First 2 months they hated him in Philadelphia. They were ready to fire him into the sun. Then he went on another one of those chaotic hot streaks where he hit 17 home runs in a month, something crazy.
But even when he's not doing that, he does usually consistently walk. So
walks are important. But he's a DH. He doesn't play. He doesn't really play. If you have JD Martinez and he's healthy, it's like it becomes repetitive. And if defense is the big issue, like everyone was saying it was last year, why do you want to compound that?
Well, I'm just saying, even looking at now, it's looking more and more likely that JD might be moved, and Schwarber was still here. There's no void at DH going into next year. Because you have Schwarber here, you could move JD for prospects or whatever. You can go fleece a team like the Mets who are trying to win now, which sounds like what they're trying to do because the Mets are showing interest.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. News came out right before we went live that the Mets are reportedly showing interest in JD Martinez at the trade deadline, which to me would be very interesting because just a few days ago, the Mets acquired Daniel Vogelbach, who is also in that caliber of being able to play DH.
I mean, in theory, anybody can play DH. We can stick Hogdale in at DH right now. Probably wouldn't end well, but or maybe it will. I don't know. You've got a similar build to Vogelbach, so actually, I think you might be a little taller than him. He looks like a refrigerator. I love it.
He's a first baseman or a DH. They already have Pete Alonso.
Yeah, and Dominic Smith kind of fills that role too. So
he's probably getting moved. I imagine he's
getting moved. But it's still a repetitive skill set. I could see the Red Sox getting Smith. Honestly, that's a classic Bloom.
I mean, the first second, third of his Uncle Stevie ain't fucking around. He's like, I want my World Series this year. I don't care. We're winning. I will buy whatever is necessary.
Braves are half a game back or whatever it is from the Mets, so they're like, we need to move big.
Need some juice because the Braves are a juggernaut. It was surprising when they struggled to start the year. I mean, Acuna was out, so it gave him a bit of excuse. I mean, isn't Albies out long term as well?
Yeah, Albies broke his elbow or his foot or something. Yeah,
which is
I think I heard he might be back into the year though. Like it's one of those things.
Which is all they need. Like the Braves have a real shot of repeating. Like that is a wagon of a team, and all the best players are. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's without Freeman. I mean, yes, Matt Olson is a terrific player, but they lost. I mean, look at what Freddie Freeman's doing in LA. You lost that, and you're still plenty competitive.
Let's not talk about former MVPs that are now playing in Los Angeles that teams lost. I don't even want to go down that road.
Yeah.
Man, Braves are really good.
Yeah. So all this being said, trade deadline is coming around. How is Twitter going to react to the news that the Boston Red Sox have moved their favorite players? I think it's going to be a nuclear summer. But as we've just talked about, in many cases, moving some of these players is for the greater good because several times after that, the team went on to win a World Series within a matter of a couple years. So
there's going to be a lot of people calling for Heim to be fired, which are it's not smart.
That's happening now.
Well, I was going to say, what do you mean there are going to be? That's been happening.
Well, there's going to be more.
It's
going to get louder. I don't know why. Sure. Like, it seems like Heim has gotten like such a disproportionate amount of hate compared to the average GM. I don't really know why. Like, he's made a lot of really good.
He traded Mookie.
He did trade Mookie, but like at the same time, like that was so very obviously an ownership decision. Like,
he was hired to pull the trigger on that trade.
Yeah.
I'm very confused by the people that are like, why is it ownership needs to stop this when it's like he was literally hired because this is what ownership wants. Like, this is you guys. They brought in Dombrowski to get that quick World Series. It took him 3 years and he did it fine. That's not sustainable.
But the Sox they're aiming for long-term success. They're aiming to be the Dodgers, which is fine. It's just, I understand the frustration from people who want to try to win every year. I totally get that.
Yeah. And I think last year was a little bit of, you were talking about this earlier about a regression to the mean. They played out of their minds last year, I think. And I remember thinking this at the time. I loved that team. And a lot of it was because of that reason. I think they tricked a lot of people into thinking that they were a World Series contender every year when the truth was they were a team that played to the best of their ability. And it's awesome to see that. It's awesome when your guys don't get hurt. It's awesome when you have guys that have career years and all of the trades that you make end up paying off. Because and I'm sorry, but that did happen with Hogdale Robles. That ended up being a super underrated trade last year. Schwarber was maybe the best bat trade of the offseason was getting Schwarber, and he was hurt for 2 weeks when they got him. I remember people just bitching about how they get Anthony Rizzo at the deadline. Like, how hard would it have been to do that? It's like, well, you got a guy that outperformed him. So, you tell me.
Looking back at that, though,
yeah,
it would have been nice to get Rizzo and to be able to re-sign him.
Man, I would have loved Rizzo as a stopgap between Cassis. That would have been nice.
Yeah, I think so too. And it looks like Ed might be frozen on us, so that's no bueno. But
Ed's being heated to the Shadow Realm. Tragic.
Yeah.
Can we, while Ed's gone, Ed likes to be positive. Let's transition to slander. Because I've been waiting this entire podcast to just slander
That's true.
someone.
You did say going into this that you had a very specific person in mind that you wanted to absolutely drag through the infield mud.
And listen, every Red Sox fan who watched that fucking abomination of a game, it understands why. And also, if you watch that game the full way through, I'm begging you to get other hobbies, but also I respect you on an intense level. Bro, they went down by 10 and I was fucking gone. I was like, nope. Fuck this. I have better things to do with my night. But, man, Jarren Duran on that play, I almost want him, traded, and I never want to see his face again. That is such a Bush League, no effort, loser play. You're a professional. You're a major league player. It's not it's not the bad defense where he lost the ball like in the lights, which at your home stadium, losing the ball in the lights, that's pretty yikes as a look already. But I can look past that. Whatever, you're bad at defense. We all knew this was the price of admission for you playing. To just give up, which is what he did. So he just fucking looked dumbfounded. Like, yeah, whatever. We're gonna go get the ball. Fuck it. Like, it's just quitting. No heart. I hate it. I hate that shit. I don't want it on my baseball team. It infects the locker room. And the boomer side of me the next day when he was in the starting lineup was viscerally disgusted. I was like, how the fuck is he playing today? Like, I would genuinely play a fucking dude from the Florida Gulf Coast League over him. Fucking get out. No.
That's wild considering the Florida Gulf Coast League doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Also, I love like losing internet and coming back in and knowing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I was like, Ed likes to be positive. It's okay. He can. This is like the equivalent of earmuffs. Like, I'm gonna go be a dick now.
No, God, it's hard to watch. It really is.
An inside the park grand slam. Fucking who had that on their bingo card? Hello.
To your point, this right here is the part that gets me. They're running. The ball isn't a home run because you can clearly see it right there. And he walks.
This is genuinely shades of Niger Morgan, like
Walking.
missing a ball in center field and then like throwing his glove on the ground. Like, it's shades of that. Like that level of like Bush League.
God,
it's in the
Niger
same area.
Morgan, that is a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I just always remember that one play where like he fucking misses a ball and he just throws his glove and completely quits on the play.
Ugh.
Like, that's the same ballpark Durant is in right here. It's pathetic, and genuinely, if they traded him today, good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question but why he was in the lineup. I mean, the only other outfielder that's healthy right now is Jalen Davis. Ref Snyder's beat up, so like,
You genuinely play Arroyo in center field. I don't give a fuck for that.
Arroyo's also hurt.
Cast him up and put him out there.
He's in like one of those motorized scooters trying to like track fly balls.
He's like just anyone. I just don't want to see his face. And like Cora didn't drag him after the game. He's like, the locker room did that. It was funny because Ed said in the chat, he's like, well, what do you want him to do? Publicly execute him? And I thumbs up. And I was like, yes, they should.
Yes, that's what we want.
It's a tough spot for Cora to be in, though, and I don't envy him because the team's clearly. You can tell when a team's their head's not in it, and they're not in it right now. This isn't like at the beginning of the year when they were blowing saves. This is, and I think you can kind of sense it after Sale got hurt. I mean, that was just knocked the wind out of their sails. They were just
the vibes have been obliterated. Like,
yeah. Now. There's 70 games left, so maybe some of those vibes come back. Maybe some guys come off the IL and, like they end up like getting some of those back. But like, what's Cora going to do? If they're already chewing this kid out, he gets up in front of the already brutal media here and chews him out publicly. It's not gonna help. Like,
it's not gonna help, but it would make me feel better.
That's a fair point. I do think that the appeasal of Hogdale is very important for me.
Listen, I'm just saying, like, dude, it was generally one of the most Bush League plays I've seen in the last 5 years. Like, that was bad. That was really, really bad. Like,
yeah, it sounds like
professionals don't do that.
It sounds like Hogdale wants to trot the old guillotine out into Quincy Market and just off with your head.
Dude, in that game, genuinely looks like they were fielding 9 of me out there. It was a bad deal, like that whole game.
Oh, come on, you would have showed more effort than that.
Yeah, I would have at least.
You're a go-getter. You would have chased after it.
Like, yeah, I would have lost the ball in the lights. At least I would have ran after it instead of being like, fuck it, Verdugo will get it. I mean,
I think that bothers me more than anything else because he should know better than to say something like that. Like, because it's just such as, you know what I mean? It's just
it's so tone deaf. Dude, just say I fucked up. It's not hard. It's like, it's like the lack of taking the full accountability too. That also hurts. Like I said, it's not the bad defense. Like, we all knew he had bad defense. It was the price of admission with him playing. But fucking, it's just like no effort in the major leagues. Unforgivable. That's what the money's for. That's what the fame's for.
Saying this about Doogie though, he was right after that. He does even in the middle of this. I don't get the sense that he's really given it up at all. Like he seems to still have pretty much the same energy as prior.
He always has heart, always has that energy. That's why I love him so much.
Yeah. Oh, I actually weirdly really like him in the number 3 spot. I don't mind him hitting there.
I know he's been like he's steadily been making his numbers look better over the course of the year. But like, man, he's still having a kind of rough year, which is a bummer because you kind of need him to be at least league average.
It should be no surprise that Verdugo's one of those guys that just doesn't give up on it, though. Remember when he was traded to the Red Sox in 2020 and how terrible that season was? But he was the one player that actually stood out as like, hey, this guy's not so bad. Everyone else sucks, but this guy's doing his thing. And, props to him for keeping that to him. And, he's not been terrible. He's 262 batting average isn't the best, but he's done a little bit better as of late. Going into the All-Star break, at least he was starting to really heat up and get things going.
Yeah.
At least he has the dog in him.
Yeah.
And he was hitting the ball so hard earlier in the year, and it was just always right at people.
Unlucky.
He was so unlucky. Dude, when the shift gets banned next year, then Verdugo, free real estate, bro. He's going to be so much better.
Looking forward to that. Maybe I was a year off with my Alex Verdugo batting title prediction.
Yeah, just a year off,
Just a year off. So next year, Alex Verdugo, go ahead and book it. Go ahead and place your bets out in Vegas because it will happen. All right, guys. You have anything else you want to add to this one before we hop off here?
Trying to think off the top of my head. Something positive. Really looks like we have something in Cutter Crawford, huh? He's really showing some potential. Like he could actually be a piece. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to flip it around and say something negative. Unless you're Ryan Brady, and then this is going to be positive for him. But I think it's time to shut Matt Barnes down for the season. He did another rehab in AAA today. Another hit batter, gave up 2 runs, walked a guy. It's just not. Look, I'd rather just let him just give him the extra month to recover, try to get some of that velocity back, and maybe he'll be a little more useful next year because my goodness, he just looks lost right in general.
Brady's reaction to like seeing that is probably like the critical, like him be like, "Yeah, baby, that's what I'm waiting for. That's what it's all about."
Yeah, I don't have anything personal against Barnes. It just seems like there's something off with him. It just seems like it's not working.
Bad. Also, Brian Bello showed some potential today, even though he gave up 5 runs.
Could we talk about that really quickly before we finish? Because I was really impressed by him today, actually. I think more so than in the first 2 starts. And I know the numbers don't show it that great, but if you watch that first inning, it was just like infield. It was just like these weak grounders, and he really just made one pitch that got hammered. And then after that, he was just gritting it out. He was getting big outs when he needed them. He looked a lot better. No scoreless after that first inning. I'm content with Brian Bello in this rotation for the rest of the year of all of the guys that they have there, except for maybe Crawford. I just love to see him getting the practice because just seeing him pitch in AAA and AA, he wasn't challenged, and now he's finally, for the first time in a few years, getting challenged, and I think that it's going to be good for him.
And of all the times to like get your young gun arm like some innings and get him some practice, a second half of the year where maybe you're sellers and aren't truly as competitive as you should be is a really good time to get him those innings.
Yeah, like, at least it's one of those. It's lower pressure than if you were in a pennant chase.
Yeah. Which technically they still are, but as we said before, it's not looking good.
I don't think they're in a pennant chase. I think the best possible outcome would be third wild card spot, bro, if they luck into it. But
this team meets like the Astros in the playoffs. Are you shitting me? Oh my god! Fucking annihilated.
One step at a time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
I wouldn't say
All right.
Yankees because Raffy owns fucking Cole.
So that's, yeah.
Raffy has 10 RBI, so they lose 11-10.
Imagine. I'd fucking die. I'd die.
Angels fans would be like that meme with the guy with the noose on. He's like, first time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the all-time Twitter tweets. Is like the one where it's like every time I see an Angels game, it's like Mike Trout hit for the cycle and also had 2 home runs, and Ohtani did something that hasn't been done since Tungsten Armo Doyle in 1902, and the Angels lost 11-6.
Is Tungsten Armo Doyle a real pitcher?
No.
It's Tungsten Armo. How do you spell that? What is the ethnicity of that? I have so many questions on Hogdale.
Tungsten is a very hard metal.
Tungsten Armo Doyle. The guy who made that tweet's a fucking genius. That's one of the best tweets I've ever seen.
All right, guys, let's bounce out of here before we spiral any more out of control this week. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time whenever Brad and company are on here, hopefully recapping something more positive that the Red Sox have done. If not, we'll be back here again next Sunday to continue to wallow in pity. Make sure you follow us, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pesky Report. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name. And